Mistake number 2 that I see a lot of people making is continuously trying to really restrict diet in order to control their food. And I definitely did this. All I kept doing, like all I knew is that I felt completely out of control with food. That I felt like if I wasn't on a diet, if I wasn't trying to either cut out sugar or carbs, or maybe I was trying to do keto diet or Whole30 or whatever it was, if I didn't have some sort of rules to follow, then I felt like I would like lose my shit with food. And actually what ends up happening is it's a pendulum effect. It's the complete opposite. So we end up really restricting, or maybe you're intermittent fasting, right? Intermittent fasting, so you're not eating for the majority of the day. And then when you do give yourself permission to eat, you go crazy. There's this whole swing of the pendulum. And a lot of this is like trying to overcorrect binge eating. So a lot of times I used to intermittent fast as a way to overcorrect all the eating I had done the night before. But then I was so hungry by the time I let myself eat the next day that I would end up binging again. And it just became this perpetual pendulum effect. And it finally took me until recently to realize that it wasn't that I needed to stop the binge eating. I needed to stop the restricting. I needed to stop the over dieting. And once I rather than overcorrecting or overreacting to my overeating, once I was able to just like, okay, that happened, whatever, I'm still going to nourish my body. I still deserve to eat. I don't need to excessively exercise to make up for my food. Then I was able to start listening to my hunger fullness cues. Once I was able to eat enough and I wasn't so restricted and feeling so deprived, those cravings and urges to binge diminished. But it just wasn't what I was expecting that I needed to do. Mistake number 3, and this is a huge one, not only when it comes to your health, but I would say in all aspects of life, and that is identifying with failure and really holding ourselves back by our limiting beliefs. This idea, like when I said that I felt broken, I said, I am broken. Like I am a binge eater. I have an eating disorder. I am this. And we as human beings have an innate need to be consistent with how we believe we are, with who we believe we are. So if I say I'm a binge eater, then I'm going to do those things. It's the same thing as if I say I am a procrastinator, right? I'm much more likely to procrastinate because I identify with that thing. Or if you were to say I am a morning person, if you believe you're a morning person, how are you going to act? If you believe that you are a mindful eater, how are you going to act? If you believe that you are an athlete, how are you going to act? And it's so important that we're really conscious about the way that we are talking about ourselves. Do we say that I will always struggle with my weight? This is always how it's been. I've never been able to do this. These kinds of this kind of language, it really impacts our actions and what we do. And this brings me to what I mean when I say you don't get what you want, you get who you are. And so this whole identity-based habits, because I firmly believe this is something from James Clear, his book, Atomic Habits. I love it. I rave about it. I highly recommend you read it. He talks about this idea that every action you take is you casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. And so rather than thinking about what we want, the outside, so first think about what you want. Let's put it in a perspective of a healthy body, right? We want, our desired outcome is to be healthy, have energy, feel in control of our food, all of these things. Well, in order to have that, you need to understand who it is. Who is the type of person you are trying to become? Who already has those results? I also like to think of this as behavior, right? In order to have the things that you want, you must first be the type of person who is capable of having those results. And more than anything, knowing who you want to be, you also need to know why. All right? There may be certain things it may not be very important to you. If it's not important to you, you won't actually do it. It's really important that you understand, why do you want to be healthy? Why do you want to be a strong person? Why do you want to be a mindful eater? Why do you want to be an energetic person? Why do you want to be a morning person? Why is that important to you? And when you really understand that, then you'll start acting as if you're already that person and hence get the results. And so this is my framework to rediscover your relationship with food, rediscover your relationship with yourself, and really actually more than anything, create these habits, casting those votes to become the person who's capable of getting the results you want. And that is to first recognizing your triggers, and we're kind of talking about that, recognizing your cues, your cravings, recognizing your, what are the things that you're reaching for, your behaviors, your thought patterns. Redesign your environment, redesign your social circle, redesign and curate your social media, and refine, because everything comes with repetition, repetition, repetition. So to kind of break this down a little bit, step one, recognize. Until you make, it was Carl Jung, he's a German, I think, psychotherapist, and he was the one who said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that is why it is so important for us to first take time to recognize. When we're looking at a habit, right, in order for a habit to be repeated over and over and over again, there's always a cue or a trigger. And so which cause cravings, right? And then it leads to a behavior, which is going to lead to a reward. So let's kind of put this in perspective. So say I'm about to work on an email, and I start getting, the cue is that I'm uncomfortable, right? That I'm frustrated. I don't know how to get the words out. I'm feeling overwhelmed. That leads to a craving for distraction, right? I don't want to be feeling this uncomfortable feeling anymore. So I'm craving distraction. The routine, in order to satisfy that craving, could be reaching for food, maybe reaching for social media. It could be calling a friend. It could be going for a walk. It could be all these things, but the reward is distraction. And so in order for us to change the routine, which could be turning to food or turning to some sort of a negative habit, the first thing we need to do is focus on the cue and the trigger. What do we recognize? How can we become aware of what is cueing our behaviors? Are you eating because you're tired? Are you eating because you're bored? Are you eating because you're stressed or overwhelmed or anxious? Are you eating because you're depressed? Are you eating because you're over restricting or dieting? What is it that is triggering your behavior? And once we understand what our triggers are, then we can go on to step two. Step two is redesigning your environment. So you can either be a victim of your environment or you can choose to be an architect of it, right? And so because far too often, we can set goals for ourselves, but if our environment does not support that behavior, it's unlikely we'll be able to keep up with it and continue it. So think of it this way: make it easy, obvious, and convenient. In no way at all am I saying not to have the cookie. All right. It's like, but having the cookies right out in front of you, our biggest trigger or our biggest sense is sight. And so if you're seeing these foods just laying out on the counter on the table, even if you weren't even hungry, it can trigger hunger. And so it's not that you have to cut out these foods, but instead I encourage you to add in and make the more nutrient dense option easier, obvious, more convenient. When you come home, can you make sure that you cut up raw vegetables so that you have maybe veggies and hummus that are an easy snack? Can you have fruit on the table? Can you do some meal prep or maybe cut up some vegetables ahead of time so making meals at home is more easy, obvious, and convenient? The same thing would be like laying out your clothes the night before, right? If you want to go to the gym, make it easier for yourself that your clothes are laid out the night before. Make it easier that the gym you go to is on your way home from work. Whatever it is, be an architect of your environment, and then be proactive. If you recognize that certain triggers like overwhelm, like depression, like feeling lonely, especially at night or on the weekends, if those are triggers for you to reach for food or some sort of unhealthy habit that you're wanting to stop, then how can you redesign your environment to be more productive? Can you have your journal nearby so that you can actually start journaling your feelings instead of just trying to numb them? Can you make sure that you have a breath work practice that when you get cued to that I'm feeling overwhelmed, instead of reaching for something, you just take a moment and pause and breathe? Or maybe you're stressed and anxious and you just need to release energy. Can you have a playlist ready to go that you know the song that just makes you feel good, that you can dance, that it's going to kind of pull you out of that trigger?